while since we spoke to Rafael Eissmann. He is a historian who lives in Chile, and I think it's been a couple of years since we had Rafael on the program. He is a expert when it comes to lost civilizations, but more importantly, a true history, an ancient history of South America and the migration from what he believes the beginning of Homo sapiens sapiens, which would be from Antarctica through South America into Mexico and then into North America. Always great to have him on the program. And today we are going to talk about some new material based on his writing. I will be posting some of his articles on the Facebook page, and you can read about his work. So, hey, Rafael, great to have you back on Earth Ancients. How you been?
Thank you, Cliff. Thank you for inviting me. I'm very happy to be once again on Earth Ancients. I'm very happy to, as I say, to be part again. And it's a great opportunity also to talk about all this fascinating pre-Hispanic past we have.
I want to talk about Arthur Posnanski to open our show because he is almost a forgotten figure in his research. He is really the first one that developed fascinating ideas about early man populating South America, and in specific, the city of Tiwanaku up in Bolivia. What do we know about Arthur Posnanski?
Arthur Posnanski was born in Austria, and he was one of these really extraordinary figures that was working on a first period of his life, studying the boundaries, between Bolivia and Brazil. And he's this type of adventurous figures we read, kind of from fictional books. Yet, I would say one of the most important subjects, he has contributed to our understanding of pre-Hispanic past is the fact that he was a field research. Okay, so he was one of these first Europeans that really did some diggings, of Tiwanaku and Pumapunku, not as we see these sacred sites today. Most of what Posnanski studied was absolutely covered. What we know today, and this is something very, very important, it's a very artificial construction. What we see today of Tiwanaku, it's something that people just built, during the 1920s and 1930s. It's not the original building, how was originally constructed. Now, Posnanski, as I say, was a field researcher, and it's very interesting because one of the things, just like other people that has really studied the pre-Hispanic past, realized, according to the archaeological evidence, that there were at least two pre-Hispanic groups, one with dolichocephalic skulls and the other one with brachycephalic.
Yeah,
And
you mean like the long heads of like Paracas people?
not necessarily. I mean, so we can understand like European skull people, okay, that is totally different than what we see today as indigenous people, which are more roundish type of skulls. Okay, so that's one of the first and very, very important goals that Arthur Posnanski was able to, find out. Then something that's absolutely amazing, talking about Tiwanaku and Pumapunku, which is the fact that we are talking that Tiwanaku is over 3,800 meters above the sea level.
That's
So
like what? That's like 12,000 feet, isn't it?
around 12,000 feet,
Yeah,
yes,
above sea level. Yeah,
yes,
really high
yes.
up there.
So the questions that Arthur Posnanski made is, who are the, builders? Who are the constructors of Tiwanaku, of Pumapunku, and what's its antiquity? And that's something he started to, study through the chronicles from Spanish conquistadors as well as, priests. So that's when he came with this tradition that we have spoken of in some other programs about the Viracochas or white gods. That's something that even today you can, when you are in Tiwanaku and Pumapunku, hear people referring to these really ancient civilizing gods, the Viracochas or white gods. So that's something that's very interesting on the field research made by Professor Posnanski, because he started to not only study the archaeological remains, but also, the traditional lore of the highlands of Bolivia and, of course, of Peru.
Right. So I want to talk a little bit about Tiwanaku because it's a unusual city. Posnanski believed it was built 15,000 BC, which is extremely old for most cities that we understand. So it's very, very old. It was built during the Ice Age. And he says that the technology used is unknown to build the city because it's stone andesite and it's cut with such precision that there must have had some unusual cutting tools. What do we know about the technology, Rafael?
We know so little. We know so little about the tools, the instruments to build not only, I would say, Tiwanaku, but more intriguing, Pumapunku. I have been there several times. I still cannot understand the use of these H blocks and of these monumental, monolithics.
So you've seen the
That
blocks up close and personal then, right? You've actually
Yes,
been up there a
yes,
couple of times.
and
Yeah.
most of it's still underground. I recalled a conversation I had with Eric von Däniken. He said that this is probably one of the most unique settlements we have on the surface of Earth, you know, and it is connected, as I say, and I want to be very specific on this field. It is connected with these legendary figures known as the Viracochas. Who were they? They do not belong, to any of the cultural traditions that remain today. Yet their representations in petroglyphs, in pottery, in figures, you can find it from, I would say, Tierra del Fuego to Alaska. So it's very amazing to have this common root of civilizing gods, and most important is that their metropolis, as Edmund Keys claimed, was Tiwanaku. Now, what you mentioned, it's also something that we have to keep in mind, the antiquity of Tiwanaku. Yes, Posnanski claimed it's of an extremely antiquity, yet I do recall the chronology given by Edmund Keys goes even as back as 21,000 years old. And that undermines absolutely all what we know about the pre-Hispanic past.
Now, one of the things that you brought up is the Viracocha, and according to your writing and to, I think it was the Spanish chronicler Pedro Cisa de Leon, doesn't he say that the Viracocha capital is Tiwanaku?
Yes, yes.
And
The,
he heard it
the,
from the Indians, right?
Yes, some facts here. It's important to recall. Tiahuanaco, at the time of the Incas, was already ruins. And when the Spanish conquistadores arrived there, they asked who were the builders of these ruins, and the Inca said this is a sacred place. This is where the Viracochas once lived. You know, but amazingly, there are no living traditions about Tiahuanaco nor about Pumapunku. And they have been referred always by the Incas, by the Quechuas, and then, of course, by the Aymara people as a sacred place because the gods live there.
What do we know of the Viracocha? You write that your belief is that they're from Atlantis, correct? They're Atlantinians?
Those are the origins of the Viracochas in Atlantis. It's one of the ideas that was presented by Edmund Keys back in the 1920s and 1930s. Edmund Keys was a disciple of Hans Horbiger and the glacial cosmogony. Also, Posnanski referred to these white-skinned people, based, as I say, on these chronicles. Now, what I have studied, it's very close to the ideas that were presented by Professor Roberto Rengifo when he claims that this substratum moved, from an really geologically ancient axis between Antarctica and Patagonia, and they moved from south to north. And in the highlands, they established in what later on was known as Tiwanaku. And it's interesting to mention that, we have this, as I say, representations in art, in pre-Hispanic art, that depicts these anthropomorphic figures with rays emanating from their heads. And all the traditions we have about them refer, as I say, to these figures as the Viracochas or white gods. So my guess it is that these figures are originated in the south, in the extreme south of Chile, Patagonia.
So the Viracocha are these white gods that are seen not only in South America, they're also highlighted in Mexico, to present day Mexico.
Yes, yes.
Where else do we read about the Viracocha? What are other parts of the world?
You see, this is something that we have faced, in Orthodox history, mainstream history, the fact that we have a view about the inhabitants of the pre-Hispanic world, yet we have different people pretty much since the so-called discovery of the continent. They witnessed, white populations that were not from European origins, So I would say that this group of people, according to the archaeological vestiges we have, were really the very first inhabitants of the continent. Now we have people such as Roberto Rengifo, Arthur Posnanski, Edmund Keys, Emeterio Villamil de Rada, among others. They claim that there was an original white race in the Americas before the arrival of the indigenous people, and this is proved, by the archaeological evidence. Now, whatever happened with these people, we have, again, the legendary tradition of the flood, or, the Great Deluge, which is something that now it's proven scientifically as the Dreyer-Younger impact, the Clovis comet around 12,900 years ago. So once again, we have this folklore, so to say, the traditional lore that science later on proves to be right. So it's interesting enough. Now, something that I have just recalled, one of the most important books written by Arthur Posnanski, it's Tiwanaku, The Cradle of American Men.
Right.
But that book originally was titled Tiwanaku, The Cradle of Humankind, which, it's something absolutely different than, the first version given after Posnanski passed away. And this is something that also was claimed by Roberto Rengifo, that origins of the Homo sapiens sapiens was actually in South America. And it's not, this is something that was very important and very striking to realize. It's absolutely another view, of the American past, because I thought at one point that it was just 2 or 3 scholars, who were claiming this, but that's not at all. As I say, we have Emeterio Villamil de Rada, who was born in Bolivia. He wrote a book around 300 or 400 pages based on mythology and archaeology, and he claims also the origins of mankind in South America. Then we have Francisco Pascayo Moreno, who also claimed that these origins was in Patagonia. Roberto Rengifo, we have spoken about him. Arthur Posnanski. Then, of course, we have P.H. Fawcett claiming the very same idea. So,
Yeah.
question is why we ignore these fields of such importance, of these extraordinary field researchers.
Yeah, I think it seems like that the people like Posnanski and Percy Fawcett, we're going to talk about him in a minute, were outside of the normal theories of mankind's development. And because they were such radical thinkers, they weren't accepted by the mainstream. And they weren't, their theories were not accepted at all, which is
Well,
sad.
that's that. But Percy Harrison Fawcett was member of the Royal Society, Geographical Royal Society of England. Roberto Rengifo, he was a scholar of University of Chile. Arthur Posnanski was a very well-known archaeologist. We're not talking about here that they were like unknown figures or
Right.
they made random research. On the contrary, they were, I would say, well-known figures in their time, and it's amazing. It's absolutely amazing to see how their ideas have been just, pushed away, ignored.
It's the
So,
dates. I mean, when you read Posnanski's work, to have the date of Tiwanaku at 15,000 BC, it's too much. It's too much for the current archaeological community. Let's talk about something that you write about, which is the Tiwanaku Gate of the Sun, which is it actually shows the Viracocha on the carving. What do we know about the gates of the sun, the big gate, the megalithic stonework?
well, according to Edmund Keys, it's a calendaric system based on these um, ideographies. The main figure of the Sun Gate is the Lord of the Staff, which is Viracocha himself, surrounded by these condor men figures as well as other, smaller anthropomorphic figures. Edmund Keys wrote about this calendar, but yet here once again we face, the mainstream history. Why? Because Edmund Keys, based on the glacial cosmogony, claims that the this calendaric system, that we observe on the Sun Gate, goes back to time, where the rotation of Earth was different because there was another moon. You know, I know this is very controversial, but all this was studied by Hans Horbiger and by Philip Faut in the Glacial Cosmogony that was published in 1913. Now, absolutely, as you said, Cliff, undermines what we know, the antiquity of the Tiwanaku and therefore of the Sun Gate. It's just, it really undermines the traditional history we know of. Now, this Sun Gate, it would have been one part of the roof of Tiwanaku. I don't know if we have spoken in another program about this, but what we know of Tiwanaku, the vestiges, archaeological vestiges we see today are the roof of an underground city. And I would like to talk just shortly about archaeological exploring. They went underground, to these tunnels. They have recorded that, and what they have found, it's amazing.
Did,
Underground.
did they
Uh,
do ground penetrating radar and find that? I mean, how much of the city is exposed? Like 10%
Oh,
or
very little,
very
very
little?
little. As I say, it's the roof, and let's say, for instance, the Acapana pyramid, is still buried. What we have there is just Kalasasaya and part. And once again, we have to keep in mind that there's no enough will from authorities, from universities to make a systematic study and dig, as deep as it's possible, to find out all what it's still there in Tiwanaku. Pumapunku, as well, it's almost buried, you know. And I agree. I totally agree with Edmund Keys and with the glacial cosmogony on the fact that Tiwanaku and Pumapunku are still and will be for a long while mysteries because the antiquity is not even clear, and
Oh,
therefore,
yeah.
we cannot even, be certain of how deep these buildings are.
Yeah. Have you heard about John Burke, the American researcher who went to Tiwanaku and did studies on the energy fields of there? Apparently, those stone blocks that make up walls and floors and roofs conduct electricity, conduct energy of some kind. Have you heard about that?
No, I haven't. I haven't.
Yeah.
But I think that the all these cultures and civilizations we have, not only in South America, throughout the world, have another level of knowledge and, of course, of consciousness, and build many of these sacred temples and um, sites um, with, as we can guess, with unknown technology.
Yeah. I want you to talk a little bit about an article that we discussed a couple of years ago featuring these golden plains. And you attribute a few of them to Tiwanaku. I think they're not all there, they're from another area, but obviously Tiwanaku is very sophisticated, very advanced technology beyond our concepts today. How they cut those stones, megalithic size, multi-ton weighing stones. But what are these planes that were made into whistles? They're very detailed. They have wings and engines and what do we know about the planes?
Well, we have at least one Tiahuanaco airplane model, which is, quite small. I would say 10 centimeters in its longest part, which present extraordinary resemblance with those of the Kimbaya, the golden Kimbaya airplanes. As you say, this Tiahuanaco figure, reproduce the sound of an airplane. You
Oh,
know,
when you blow into
and
it, it sounds like an airplane.
yes, yes,
Oh,
like a
that's
jet.
engines, like jet engines?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Wow.
when we realized about this object, of course, we were not aware, of the sounds and the aerodynamic design that it has. So once again, here we face that in really ancient times, we have these I would say symbolic representations of technology, that
Yeah.
was preserved one way or the other through art, through these sacred objects, you
Yeah.
know. But they are absolutely enigmatic. Of course, we have no idea, who built this airplane figure, and then the question is, are there other figures, like this one? But it is absolutely fascinating to realize these I would say ritual figures that were preserved, throughout time, um, preserving the memory of an unknown technology.
So explain to me, Raphael, is it the artist seeing the plane and making it into a piece of jewelry or a flute of some kind? Or is it just a distant memory that they're, or a picture that they're reproducing and creating a piece of jewelry?
Well, it's a very difficult question to answer. We don't know, but I would say someone at one point saw this technology, saw this, you know, um,
These planes.
airplanes in the in very ancient times, and kept the form, like the design, without really knowing, how it was working, how it's
Right.
functioning. But you know, it was such an impact that this figure was preserved, through art, and that's something really amazing. Now, this figure we saw, the Tiwanaku airplane, probably was not the very first one. It's just like, whatever, the same thing what happened with the Christian cross. It was originally only one,
Right.
but then it got, different replicas, and you find today metal ones, very, thin ones, thick ones.
Yeah.
So you have all over the world different representations of the same symbol. My guess is that the same thing happened with these, um, figures that kept, unknown technology from the past, especially from Tiahuanaco. Now, something that I would like to add: one of these cronistas recorded, what the indigenous people of the Titicaca Lake said about the Viracochas. They said that once the Viracochas have fulfilled, their civilizing role, in the highlands, they, quote, took a cloud and went up to heaven. That was written in the 16th century.
That was a
Before
chronicler was writing that down, one of the conquistadors.
he wrote it down. He wrote
Oh,
it down.
okay.
So of course they could not explain, but we have these, and traditions of pre-Hispanic cultures, referring that some of these gods really uh, took off into the sky and disappeared.
Can you talk briefly about the Bolivia Gold Museum? Because in that museum, there's a number of planes and artifacts that look like they're from some sophisticated civilization. Now, are the whistles in the Gold Museum?
No, the okay, the um, Quimbaya golden airplanes are from Colombia.
Okay.
Okay, and the one we saw in La Paz, it belongs to a private collector. You know,
Oh, okay.
and that's something that we have been wondering: are there other figures like this? And it will be very important at one point, of course, to you know study how many of these artifacts have, this aerodynamic design, from the pre-Hispanic past.
Right.
Now, very, very briefly, in the Museo del Oro de La Paz, so far I understand, it is a very enigmatic stone vessel, called a Fuente Magna. Now, La Fuente Magna has got cuneiform inscriptions,
Oh,
and
really?
that was discovered not far away from Tiahuanaco. Not in Tiahuanaco itself, but I would say a couple of kilometers, which is, in the same area of influence. And this Fuente Magna, has got once again the representation of the Lord of the Staff, that is of Viracocha, of course, of pumas, of snakes, these totemic sacred animals of the tradition of the Andes. But interestingly enough, this Fuente Magna has cuneiform inscriptions.
Interesting. Yeah. Hey, before we start talking about Percy Fawcett, I want you to give us a highlight. You write that present day Chile was the home of the Viracocha. Is there like ruins that you have in Chile? Because recently you found some petroglyphs or geoglyphs, excuse me. Uh,
Well,
talk
yeah,
about those geoglyphs.
well, that's something that we are still studying. It's on a very first stage. It's absolutely amazing site because the proper view of this geoglyph, it can be seen only from the air. You
So
know,
who found it? Was it a pilot, or was somebody
no,
using
no, no,
they were
no.
using a
This is
drone?
something that we have been studying for a long while. It was these ruins were revealed by local indigenous um, person to one of my professors a long while ago. But it has been um, technically and virtually untouched. You know,
Really?
and yeah, and interestingly enough, you realize, these geoglyphs have geometric patterns. You know, as I say, that can be seen only from the air. Now, we are talking about here that whoever designed this geoglyph have mathematical thoughts. You know, what's its antiquity? What was it built for? Whatever happened, what was the purpose of it? We have just questions at this point, no answers. We're still, in the process of seeing what can be done there because it's very, very interesting to first realize that this is, it would be probably one of the geoglyphs that you can find away, really away from Nazca.
So is it on the foothills in the mountains? Is it close to Santiago? Where is this
No, it's
place?
not close to Santiago. It's in the north of Chile, and it's in the like very close to the Andes.
Oh, so it's up high.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Fascinating. You've been writing extensively about P.H. Fawcett, who was an explorer. He was eventually, after a number of different expeditions into the Amazon, he eventually was lost. But what was his motivation to go to research into the Amazon? Was it the hope to finding a lost city, or what? What was his unique interest?
Well, P.H. Fawcett, just like Arthur Posnanski, started to work on the boundaries between, Peru, Bolivia, and Brazil. And very soon he was, you know, um, aware of the sacred tradition of indigenous people, of tribes, and they talked to him about this lost city, you know. And then he found this in the public library of Rio, the Raposo manuscript, which is a Portuguese explorer that, wrote about this golden lost city, which is something that you find pretty much archetypically throughout the Americas,
Yeah.
and P.H. Fawcett, very, very similar to Arthur Posnanski and Roberto Rengifo. He was a field researcher. Let's never forget that because what they saw is totally different than what we find today, in school books or in mainstream, history. So very soon he got fascinated by this tradition of these, once again, white gods. He himself witnessed the existence of tribes with white population. So they were um, referring to him the existence of this lost city, and he developed six expeditions from the beginning of the 19th century until 1925, when his um, tracks became, lost. So I would say he was, focused on finding, these origins of the high civilizations of South America. let's not forget that most of the cultures that the Spanish people, and conquistadores found, they refer to the Andes, as the cradle of their civilization. That's
Huh.
something that you find in Tiwanaku. That's something you find among the Incas, the Tahuantinsuyo. And of course, here in Chile, you have this concept as well, the sacredness of the Andes. So in the case of P.H. Fawcett, you know, um, all what he heard from the tribes, he made references to this sacred city.
Yeah.
Now I think we have to understand that the concept of city it's absolutely different from the Western point of view. You know,
Mm.
we have a clear image of what a city is, but the city
Yeah.
of the pre-Hispanic concept could be simply a temple. I'm not saying that there are no ruins. Of course, we have, all these fantastic cities in Mesoamerica, of course, in Machu Picchu, but probably our our guess is that what PH Fawcett was looking for would be more like a temple, you know, not necessary, and I insist on this as a city as we in the Western world can, understand that.
What did he use as a map or a guide to go into the Amazon? Was there a conquistador's story, or did he read something about the Viracocha and then decide to go into the Amazon?
Well, his first milestone was, as I say, Raposo manuscript, which is very I think I recall it's 12 pages or something, where Raposo refers to this golden city, you know, and
Golden
then
City.
he was based on the oral tradition, he heard from these tribes in the Amazon jungle. Now, something that is interesting to specify is that unlike most of the explorations in the Amazon jungle that people take, which is through the rivers, P.H. Fawcett made it uh, through the jungle itself, saying that the answers are not going to be found near the rivers, but at the very core of the Amazon jungle. Meaning by that he was not looking for, a normal settlement of a tribe, which is, what you find near the rivers. No,
Yeah.
he was looking into the really depth of the Amazon jungle.
Yeah, I'm curious to know more about this because of course the Spanish came over and they devastated the Inca and took all their gold and killed, the rulers and everything. But are we familiar with any conquistador that went into the Amazon looking for a golden city? Did they actually go
Yes,
into the Amazon?
many. I think Francisco de Orellana was one of the first. I would say there are at least 20 great
20.
explorers. Yes, and most of them they just disappeared. They are the ones that first started to talk about these Amazon women. That they were very furious and warrior tribe of just women, and that as it was later on heard, for instance, in Cusco or in Lima, it was thought that it was just, myth, not a real tribe. You know, yes, absolutely. The explorers, Portuguese and Spanish conquistadores, were really, really focusing on, arriving to this lost city where all the gold was kept. But um, I don't think that's a real temple that P.H. Fawcett was, looking for.
Okay. Now, you've written a number of articles about the Atacama Desert, and you also talk about a people, or what you refer to as settlers before the Native Americans. And this was found by Gustave Lepage. And I want you to talk a little bit about that because this is something I didn't know about. I didn't know the Atacama Desert was populated by anyone.
Well, different studies have shown us that what is today the Atacama Desert 10,000 years ago, 8,000 years ago was a jungle. Okay,
Green.
so different archaeologists since the 19th century have made extraordinary studies, in what it is, as I say, today Atacama Desert. One of them, in during the 20th century, Gustavo Lepage, he was a priest, and he opened at least 5,000 tombs, and he built
Tombs.
up a museum, and you have amazing mummies, different skeleton, different skull shapes, and he claimed that there were hominids, skulls that, were absolutely a parallel to the development of the Homo sapiens.
So it's a
Uh,
human race that died off.
yes, yes, not one, not two, but several. We have, for instance, like the Paracas skull people.
The
We have
Paracas, yeah.
those in Atacama Desert. Then we have European type of skulls as well, and then we have indigenous people. Besides the three groups, you have very small. I remember very small skeletons. And the questions that Gustavo Lepage was asking, it's like, to what human race do these messages belong to? And one of the interesting things that he wrote about, he said that they probably appeared, developed themselves for thousands of years, and then became extinct without projecting any single branch into new groups. And you have different archaeological layers, of course, in the Atacama Desert, which once again, have extraordinary similarities with, for instance, the Neanderthal technology. The question is, who were these people? Why were they there? Whatever happened with them? This is something that is absolutely fascinating in archaeology, in history, to find out what was the destiny of these groups. And that's something that, it's the same thing with Tiwanaku, with Pumapunku, and of course with the tribes that P.H. Fawcett was, meeting in his journey into the jungle
Yeah.
of Brazil, of the Amazon.
Yeah. Have there been any tombs or grave sites uncovered in Tiwanaku to see what the people look like?
Yes, yes. In the Tiwanaku Museum, we have some mummies, of the Tiwanaku people, and all of them have this conic, elongated skull.
The elongated skulls. Are they
Yes,
as long as the Paracas people or just,
yes, yes,
oh my
yes.
God, so that whole race was like that.
Yeah, yeah. And that's something that we have to keep in mind. These the builders of Tiwanaku were not the indigenous people we can think of. It was a totally different world, and that's something that's interesting. That later on, that tradition of these gods, was preserved. And that's one of the reasons why we can understand why different groups, not only the Incas, which were the last, were worshiping, everything about Tiahuanaco. You have this effigy, as I said before, of Viracocha. You have it, you know, throughout the Americas, and that's something that was something that was observed by all these scholars, all these extraordinary researchers, when they say that the influence of Tiwanaku reached as far as Mexico, even in the States.
Yeah. Why do you think traditional museums don't have human remains, skeletal remains of these unusual hominin types? Is it because they're so radically different?
Well, I would say we have an official version of history that has been on not only for centuries, but I would say over a millennia.
Are you saying
Um,
that they're editing our history, Raphael? Are you
Absolutely,
saying that they are not, they're covering things up? Come on now.
absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. For example, why mainstream archaeologists claim that the origin of the human race um, goes to Africa? You know, why do we uh, why do we have to believe that whenever we have, let's say, in the Americas, our own traditions? You
Yeah,
know, how do we connect these elongated groups found throughout the continent with, the origins in Africa, in Kenya and Ethiopia, of the human race? Why we have, for example, all the lifetime work of Roberto Rengifo simply ignored. The same thing with Posnanski. Posnanski, as I have mentioned, his most important book is Tiwanaku, The Cradle of Mankind.
yeah,
Yet, they changed the title to The Cradle of American Man, which
yeah,
is totally different. We have all these researchers claiming that our antiquity is way much older, and there have been races of great knowledge, of unknown technology that, have at one point disappear through world cosmic catastrophes. You know, so my guess is that those that are, as you say, editing our history want us to ignore or forget, you know, what the very same traditions of, let's say, people in Tiwanaku in the Amazon jungle still claim that they were gods, that they have, an extraordinary knowledge that allowed them to build, for example, um, a magnificent city as Tiwanaku or as Pumapunku, and Nazca and this geoglyph we were talking about some minutes ago, or Sacsayhuaman, and all the knowledge we have in the past, you know.
yeah.
So, as a historian, I faced all these questions a long while ago, and I realized that, what we have been told, it's a lot of lies, and the purpose of interviews like this and of the work of different people in different places of the world, I think goes in that direction of, um, rescuing, that fascinating past,
Yeah.
all these tradition, all these archaeological vestiges, and understand that it was something else.
As a historian, a Chilean historian, though, Raphael, why is it so difficult for archaeologists to think beyond a certain time frame? It's like you can't go further back than dynastic Egyptian or the Sumerians or even the Inca without a problem. If we go to like Polanski's problem is that people that we why people reject him is that he came up with a date for Tiwanaku of 15,000 BC. That blows archaeologists out of the window.
Everything,
Why
yes.
are they so troubled with extending the date for sophisticated
Well,
man?
this I'm not going to talk about religion, but this has got to do with the chronology of the priests. You know, the Catholic Church, let's say the Inquisition during the Conquista, the discovery, the Conquista, and then during the colonial times,
Yeah.
were the very first ones to, evangelize, to convert all these American pagans. And, the same thing happened before in Europe. Everywhere, there were cultures and there were civilizations that had knowledge of really remote times, and pretty much throughout the world, you have this knowledge about this golden age with different names, of course.
Yeah.
There were great civilizations, that had extraordinary knowledge. That uh, it's an opposite view, of this redemptional sense of the church. The same thing, the modern version of this line, it's evolution. You know,
Okay, so I'm trying to understand, why does the church care? Because they have a history that they don't want to change?
yes, because it starts, according to their view, in the Middle East, from a very lower level, supposedly to our great level today.
So
But
so so they're also including Jesus Christ in his time frame.
yes, 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 you know, it's got to do with an evolutionary um, reading,
Yeah.
and let's not forget that not many centuries ago, everything that was so-called before the flood could not be accepted,
Right.
and that same group of theories and that same knowledge, one way or the other, became of what we understand today as evolution. The questions are, how come if, just stepping out from the last ice age, you have a worldwide phenomenon of the constructions of pyramids with cosmic alignments.
Yeah.
That doesn't make sense. We have that like kind of funny image of the Neanderthals, of cavemen with very brutal type of life and such. Neanderthals, according to all what we can study from their vestiges, were absolutely sophisticated. Even more, there were people that survived through the ice age. That's something that probably no single country today would be able to.
Yeah.
These people were working with their hands, absolutely amazing stone tools. So you start to really study, as I say, the archaeological vestiges, and you have another history. If we read the mainstream history books, of course, we're going to believe in evolution, in the chronology, we have been taught, but, once again, it doesn't make sense. We
Yeah.
have parallels. For example, in Chile, we have these stone tools, or in the Atacama Desert that are strikingly similar to those of the Neanderthals in Europe. How can you explain that? We
Oh,
have
the
symbols,
same as the Neanderthal tools?
stone tools. Those stone tools that have been found in the Atacama Desert are extraordinarily similar to those of the Neanderthals in Europe.
Okay. Yeah, well, that's
Well,
weird.
it's weird if we see that there was no connection, there was no transoceanic connections, but you know that's something that came up, with this mainstream history.
Rafael Eissmann, always a pleasure speaking with you. I wanted to mention that you are organizing the first Congress of Forbidden History. It's going to be held October 18th to 19th. Tell us a little bit about it. We're going to be a sponsor, and our listeners can be streaming these presentations, right?
Yes, of course.
Give us the
Well,
details. Where's it held?
this first international history, first international congress of forbidden history, is going to take place in Piedemonte, northern Italy, this October, and we're going to have, I would say, for the first time, most extraordinary field researchers. We're covering all those fields that mainstream history, mainstream archaeology do not want to cover. That is the origins of mankind, the ancient technology we have vestiges of.
I mean, these are all Europeans that have researched. They're geologists and scientists and writers, right?
Yes, and we have a friend also from India. And well, this is the first step for what we are focusing on doing, that is of history. We have concluded that there are so many vestiges throughout the world, that allow us to say, there's another history. There are other human origins and another tradition that we have to rescue and to present. You know, we're going to be covering, as I said, the sacred tradition of the Amazon, the Atlantis myth. Both its reality and the echoes that were kept both in Europe, and in the American tradition. Of course, the enigmatic origins of mankind and the vestiges of what we have spoken today of Tiwanaku.
Right. And this is 2 days, is October 18th through the 19th. And
Yes.
is it 100% streaming, or are you expecting people to actually come and be a part of it?
Well, no, we're it's gonna be a live event. We're gonna be on a place. I do not have information. I can send it to you.
Oh, we'll talk about it. It's coming up though. So it's two
Yeah,
days
yes,
and presentations from people, Italians and French people and Germans, everybody.
yes,
Yeah,
yes, from Italy, from Russia, from India, from Germany, and of course, um,
from
you
South
know,
America.
from South America. Yes, you know, yeah. I think it's a nature effort after years of field research and of different type of studies that we have come up with this great idea, and I think it's going to be a unique event. So I'm very happy, Cliff, that you're going to be also supporting us.
Yeah, first Congress of Forbidden History. This is going to be an annual event, and we will be a sponsor. We'll let the people know more about it. I'm going to have you on the show to talk about it, promote it as we get closer. Okay,
Thank you.
Rafael.
Perfect.
All right, I want to mention this that Rafael is in Chile, obviously, but we are going to put together a small gallery of images that we have covered during this interview. You can see them on the Earth Ancients Facebook page. We have a public page. Just type in Earth Ancients, and we have a private page that you can join. So for more information, go to Facebook. We'll give you the details. Give people your web address, Rafael.
It's obras rafaelvidela.blogspot.com.
Okay, I'll make sure that people get them. Hey, always a pleasure speaking with you, Rafael. Excellent material and really insightful. And we'll talk to you real soon. All right.
The pleasure is mine. Thank you very much for inviting me, Cliff.